Hey, I see a few people trickling in, but I think we're gonna start our webinar. So, welcome everyone joining us today. My name is Zach Deitch-Gross. I'm the executive director at Transform. For those of you who don't know Transform, we are an Oakland-based nonprofit that works in the Bay Area and statewide to ensure people of all incomes thrive in a world safe from climate chaos. So we reshape how I work every day to reshape housing and transportation decision making to center community needs and combat the climate crisis. We empower, we innovate, we advocate, and through kind of the deep partnerships we have with communities on the ground here in the Bay Area we work with them to lift up their needs on housing and transportation, but then think creatively about how we change systems to advance equity and improve housing and transportation outcomes. So our latest report, Fair and Accessible Fares, Economic Justice in Transit, really embodies the span of what makes Transform's work unique. The genesis of this report came out of working with residents at affordable housing sites in the East Bay. And in talking to them, we found out that one of their top mobility concerns was accessing discounted transit passes. But our research led us beyond kind of just the status quo of do more outreach into a solution that not only addresses equity and accessibility in transit, but also helps people get banked and reduces barriers to broader means-based tested programs such as CalFresh, Medi-Cal, or potential transportation pricing programs that are coming down the pipeline. So thank you all for being here today. We've got an amazing panel with us to share their insights, and we will have time for Q&A. So please do use the Q&A function to ask your questions. And if you're just coming in late, introduce yourself in the chat. And with that, I will turn it over to Transform's Transportation Policy Manager and author of our latest report, Abibat Rahman-Davies. Abby, take it away.
All right, great. Next slide, please. Next slide. Can't see it yet, but hi, my name is Abby. I'm the Transportation Policy Manager for Transform and the author of the report we're going to discuss today. I'm going to do a brief breakdown of the report, which I'm sure that you've all read, but just in case you haven't, I will be giving you the highlights. And then after I speak, we will have three other presenters pictured here who will give their expertise from a transit, digital identity, and banking. Next slide. All right, so the why. Zach kind of already got into this a lot, so I won't say too much more about it, but essentially Transform has a history of analyzing policies to ensure that they're equitable, and we want to do the same in this report. And we decided to add unbanked population when it comes to transit access because of our work that we do in schools and communities. We saw the first-hand impact that being unbanked and not having access to transit and transit discount programs had on people in the Bay Area. And to discuss this further, I'm going to have our program director, Jennifer Leday.
Thanks, Abby. So I'm Jennifer Leday. As Abby mentioned, I'm a program director at Transform on the programs team. And Abby and Zach kind of already went over a good overview of what Transform does. So not only in addition to policy advocacy work, but we develop innovative community-centered programs that really help inform our policy work. So one of those programs that was working directly with community members was called Mobility Hubs. And through that program, we offered a bunch of different transit benefits as well as transportation options. And we offered those to people where they live. So there were three different communities that we worked with, one in Richmond, one in San Jose, and one in East Oakland. And one challenge that we've heard about frequently in a lot of the community programs that we do, and this one in particular, was that, the challenge of actually getting access to transit passes, going through the whole application process, and then different transportation services, like rideshare or ride-hailing services, where you need to have either like a credit or a debit card or some kind of bank account. That was really a challenge and a burden for them. So with the Mobility Hubs program, we started that project with a really robust community needs assessment. And so through that needs assessment process, we found overall that in those 3 different communities that I mentioned earlier, working with affordable housing sites, that half of all residents didn't have a bank account and didn't have access to a credit debit card or prepaid debit card. And in particular, in East Oakland, less than 20% of the residents had bank accounts, and just about 20% had access to credit and debit cards, and only 4% had prepaid debit cards. So that information was really eye-opening and really helped inform that project in particular, but helped us to start thinking about, different types of transportation incentives and what we could currently offer.
Thank you, Jennifer, for that. Sorry, I'm just gonna spotlight myself. So as you can see, in writing this report at Transform, we're not just speaking from a theoretical space, we're speaking from a space of actually seeing what is happening on the ground and in our communities, and a hope to change this, hence the writing of this report. Actually, if you can go back 1 slide, please. So before I get into the nitty-gritty of the report, here are the main takeaways. So, signups for MTC's low-income discount program, Clipper Start, are lackluster, and new Clipper open payment systems do not currently support low-income fare discounts. Non-standardized proprietary systems like Clipper limit the ability to deploy equitable fare programs and are not interoperable across different regions. Transit riders are more likely than the general population to be lower income and or underbanked. Thus, transitions to open payment systems may leave the most vulnerable riders behind. And transit providers, are ideally situated to help unbanked people become comfortable with digital payments as a trusted partner with frequent and repeated transactions. All right, next slide. So here are some key recommendations that we have for our report. As transit agencies move toward open payment systems, they must integrate existing transit discounts and fare products to encourage ridership and increase accessibility. Token-based systems that link transit discounts with accounts and existing means-based verification systems could lower barriers to transit accessibility with scalable impacts for transportation, food security, healthcare, and housing. Transit agencies should partner with financial service providers to ensure that and underbanked riders can access the full benefits of open payment systems and financial systems. And in the short term, transit agencies should continue utilizing nonprofits and county social service agencies to increase the uptake of Clipper Start. Next slide, please. So studies have shown that longer commute times disproportionately decrease economic security for families with lower incomes, and limited access to public transit is associated with lower employment. So access to transportation is fundamental for economic mobility. In August of 2025, Bay Area Rapid Transit BART introduced new open pair payment systems that allow riders to tap credit or debit card at fare gates, rather than requiring them to have funds on a preloaded Clipper transit card. This approach adds convenience and could boost ridership. However, as other Bay Area transit agencies transition to open payments, the new system risks leaving some riders behind because low-income and unbanked people don't have access to discount fare programs through this current open payment system. So before I go further, let's discuss some definitions that will be important to understand as I continue. Clipper is a propriety and a closed loop and prepaid system. Closed loop meaning that all non-cash fare payments must happen within the Clipper system. Riders transfer cash onto their Clipper card to pay, and fare discounts are only available within the Clipper system. And is proprietary, meaning that Clipper is a custom-built transit payment system, valid only in the Bay Area. For example, both LA's proprietary tap card and Clipper were built by the same company, but they are both not interoperable. And finally, tokens. The Clipper card system finally, tokens. Tokens use a database to connect people's eligibility for benefits, like transit, for example, to their accounts. The database puts an identifying token on the person's bank account or digital payment method, showing that they're eligible for transit benefits. The Clipper card system is provided by Cubic, a defense and transportation company, and because it's closed loop, that means only Cubic can modify it. This has led to limitations and setbacks since its introduction, from confusing sign-up processes to consistent delays, revenue loss to system outages, and the inability to add payments for last-mile mobility options, such as bike share. Next slide, please. To address fare equity and accessibility within its closed-loop system, MTC launched ClipperStart in 2020. ClipperStart offers a 50% discount to people with incomes at or below 200% of the federal poverty level. As you can see in this chart here, by providing standardized discounts across transit agencies in the Bay Area, starting in 2024, MTC has been able to boost ClipperStart signups. However, 5 years into the program, many of the riders eligible for ClipperStart are still not enrolled. In fact, there are approximately 1 million adults 19 to 64 in the Bay Area eligible for ClipperStart based on their enrollment in Medi-Cal or CalFresh, but only 57,000 have taken advantage of the discounted fare programs. Next slide. In addition to ClipperStart, MTC is beginning to allow fare payments directly by credit card and debit card, known as open payments, on Bay Area Transit for the first time. Open payments enable riders to pay as they go, eliminating the need to prepay for future transit trips. This is particularly important for people with limited incomes who can't afford to have their money locked onto a Clipper card. However, due to the limits of its proprietary system, MTC has delayed the launch of open payments several times, with December 10th being the most recent date they have laid out to have open payments on all operators. Open payments are not a new ideal. In addition to several high-profile examples in London and New York, several transit agencies in California have already instituted open payments, one of which you'll hear from later today, which not only support open payments, but also deploy transit discounts such as fare capping, fare discounts, and by linking those programs to riders' debit and credit cards. Unlike these transit operators, the Bay Area's open payment option does not currently support low-income fare discounts, preventing people eligible for the discount from benefiting from the flexibility of the pay-as-you-go system. And while MTC has committed to eventually connecting these transit discounts and open payments, they have not given a firm date for when this will be done. This discourages ridership for lower-income users because it requires them to tap their money in a Clipper card or load money into their card every time they use transit. This effectively creates a two-tier system, forcing low-income people to use a Clipper card while everybody else can benefit from open payments. Additionally, riders who do not have bank accounts pay in cash and are precluded from getting the benefits of fare capping, free transfers, or Clipper Start. Finally, people who want to qualify for transit benefits in other parts of the California and then move to the Bay Area will have to re-enroll through Clipper's special proprietary system to get a discount in the Bay Area, adding additional barriers for those with the least means. Next slide, please. To make sure that people, especially those with lower incomes, can use our transportation system equitably and efficiently, we need to rethink our approach to fare payments. Transit agencies must not only move away from proprietary closed-loop systems like Clipper, but they also must prioritize fare discount programs and banking access when launching open payments. If implemented well, these changes would improve transportation access and affordability and support economic mobility by facilitating banking access for unbanked and underbanked riders. Transit agencies have the technology to provide accessible fare products in open payment systems. Rather than forcing low-income riders to prove their eligibility for discount programs within Clipper, and then again for other programs like Medi-Cal, CalFresh, or transit agencies should instead leverage existing verified databases. These databases, like the ones provided by the California Integrated Travel Project, CAL-ITP, in partnership with the California's Department of Technology and the Digital ID program, can attach digital tokens to riders' bank accounts, which can then be applied across a variety of payment methods and programs. Leveraging existing databases lowers the administrative costs for mobility providers and the administrative burden on users. However, digital tokens only benefit those who have bank accounts. Token-based open payment systems must be paired with the tools to support usage for unbanked and underbanked riders. Next slide, please. Due to factors such as income, race, and language, transit riders are more likely to be or underbanked than other populations. This creates an opportunity for transit riders to advance economic justice by helping low-income riders access banking services. Transit fare payments are an excellent way to connect unbanked and underbanked individuals with banking systems. Frequent, cheap, and consistent fare payment transactions provide a low-stakes, repeatable experience that builds confidence in banking transactions. Token-based discount programs and the ease provided by open payment systems give riders additional incentive to try the benefits of the digital economy and banking services. The upfront funds and credentials needed to open a traditional bank account can be a major barrier to banking. Transit agencies can act as information hubs to help people get trusted bank accounts by partnering with organizations such as the Cities for Financial Empowerment Fund and their Bank On initiative, which they will speak on more later. Next slide, please. Launching open payments with perfectly connected benefit systems supported by services to help low-income people get banked won't happen overnight. To improve economic justice in transit, MTC and transit operators must balance short-term improvements to Clipper Start with long-term open payment solutions. Some short-term solutions could be MTC partnering with nonprofits to improve participation and awareness in Clipper Start through hosting community outreach events. They can also partner with social services and utility companies to provide Clipper Start sign-up information when customers sign up for social services benefits or utility discounts. MTC should also consider extending the eligibility window for Clipper Start beyond 2 years, giving people more time before they have to reapply for the discount and reducing the administrative burden on already overburdened communities and MTC staff. At its current growth rate, the funding for Clipper Start will last until 2030. MTC should prioritize long-term funding for this program from pursuing funding from the state. Next slide. Finally, MTC should conduct outreach to raise awareness of the retail locations where riders can reload their Clipper card, while also increasing the number of these locations and making sure they're equitably geographically distributed. For example, the Temple Corridor in Alameda County between 73rd Avenue and San Leandro BART has no locations where riders can load value onto their Clipper card. And as you can see in this chart, currently, the retail remote locations where people tap their card are hardly being utilized at all. To be clear, while these initiatives will be helpful in the short term, it is important to note that open payment systems with low-income discounts supported by banking assistance must remain the long-term goal. Next slide, please. All right, thank you. I know that was a lot. Thanks for sitting with me through that. And I know some of you might be thinking, oh my gosh, helping people get banked and connecting people to fare discounts is a crazy ideal. But our next speaker, Carl from Monterey-Salinas Transit, is going to tell us how they were able to do something like that over there. Carl, do you want to take it away? And then Sydney, can we bring up his slides? Thank you.
Thank you. I'm Carl Sedoryk. I'm the CEO for the Monterey-Salinas Transit District here in Monterey County. And I'll talk a little bit about our experience and I'll say kind of disrupting the current closed loop systems. And, I realize in today's marketplace that, there are some shortcomings of Clipper and the TAP systems. But as someone who's been around in this industry for 35 years, when those systems were introduced, they were revolutionary. They reduced friction as far as seamlessness between transit operators and the amount of time taking, not having to carry cash with you. So, I don't want to hammer too hard on those systems, but, technology has changed and tap to pay has become real throughout the retail networks. And we're able to see new options that are available to us. So I want to talk to you a little bit about the MST experience, kind of leapfrogging the technology into being a more current payment scheme for transit users in Monterey County. So next slide. Next slide. Well, while we're waiting on that next slide to pop up, I'll just tell you it's a map of California showing where Monterey County is. And it is a very large area of service that stretches. We serve 4 counties, as far south as Paso Robles, as far north as Gilroy, Watsonville, and then the Salinas Valley, the small communities that dot the Highway 101 corridor, the agricultural communities, as well as the Monterey Peninsula communities where many of the hospitality serving industries serve and are a source of a lot of also a lot of jobs for our community. We're a small operator by most standards. We're a $60 million a year operation, about 160 buses, 3.5 million annual passengers, serving 4 counties in an area that's 1/5 of the California coast. Through this process, we landed on a fare scheme that's $2 for 2 hours, $6 per day, $20 per week, $70 per month, with half price for youth, seniors, veterans, and persons with disabilities. And we have a variety of fare partnerships with local community colleges and universities. Next slide, please. So about our passengers, hospitality and agriculture rule the industry in Monterey County, and they are some of the lowest paying industries that we serve. We don't have a lot of high-tech workers here. They're bussing tables or they're working in ag production. 75% are minority, non-white. 3 out of 4 have annual household incomes of under $40,000 a year, and one of the most expensive counties to live in California. 2/3 lack a valid driver's license. 1 out of 4 start their trip within what the state defines as a disadvantaged community, using the Cal-Enviro screen measures. 1 out of 5 have a disability that makes them dependent on others for mobility. And they're going to destinations. The most common trip to destinations are to work, to the grocery store, school, medical, and recreation. And if someone reminds me, I want to come back to that grocery store item. Next slide. So our experience, prior to getting into this, we have been and continue to operate the GFI, traditional cash collection and closed loop fare box system. They are extremely expensive to purchase, maintain, and sustain. A single fare box can cost up to $29,000, almost $30,000 per unit. They have a high level of breakdown. They're mechanical parts inside. They break down. They're very expensive to maintain. The failure rate is very high, about 1 failure every 7,500 transactions, and it takes about 2 hours on average to repair them. In Monterey County, due to our remoteness, we have difficulty identifying armored car services to pick up the cash that we collect, and it's increasingly unavailable and sporadic, and we've almost gotten into like old Wells Fargo days, where there's some days we don't have armored car and our employees are transporting cash in unmarked vans around the county, which is neither efficient nor safe. 1/3 of violent acts against MSD coach operators start with a fare dispute that escalates into something violent. So we want a system that's easy to operate and keeps the driver out of the fare and passenger interaction. Requiring coach operators to visually validate fare payments has been historically ineffective. It's just one more thing for them to do. Some of the old, earlier systems, there were apps that you could pay, and the drivers were asked to look for the little dancing GIF or GIF on their phone to see if it was a current van. They're just not going to do that. During COVID, interest in open loop contact payments skyrocketed all around the country. And it was my aha moment when I was in working, because we were considered, what was the term? Essential employees, transit workers. Not essential enough to get our vaccines prioritized, but essential enough that we were supposed to come into work every day. And I went to the taco truck that serves our industrial park, and it had tap to pay. A $25,000 taco truck had tap to pay open to it, but I had a $900,000 brand new zero emission bus that I could not tap to pay. There was something wrong with that. So in 2021, we partnered with Cal ITP on the implementation of the first open loop fare payment system in the state of California. Next slide. And so, I'm sorry, I'm keeping track here. I need to remind myself to click my screen. So we want to remove coach operators from the fare payment discount eligibility process, make payments as easy as paying for coffee. Use the same card that you use to pay for your coffee as you pay for your bus. Don't have a different card that is only good on the bus and not good for anything else, like the Clipper or Tap cards or the Orca card or the Charlie card or the WMATA card. There's all sorts of them all around the country. My wallet's full of them. I didn't want to require a third-party app. I've got enough apps on my phone, and I'm a ornery boomer. I don't want any more apps. I just want to be able to tap and pay. offer the ability to use existing bank issued or comparable cards and their mobile devices for payment, implement a pay-as-you-go fare capping system, and use some external government system to verify discount fare eligibility so that we weren't tracking personally identifiable information here in our offices. Next slide. So we kicked off in May of 2021 to July 2023. We had a interim vendor, kind of a kickoff, and in July of 2023, we selected a vendor called Cuba. We decided this was going to be a permanent addition. We selected a new validator. We currently accept Visa, MasterCard, American, and Express at Discover, using and are the first in the country using all four those credit card schemes to do online eligibility verification for seniors, veterans, and those who are disabled that have a Medicare card issued to them. We also have our own database for those who have eligibility verification as well. Visa Cash App is available to those who do not do not wish to have a bank account or cannot afford to have a bank account. Visa Cash App is a fintech tool that allows you to use your card like a debit card. We have a Google Wallet transit card that shows your ability to where your status is with fare capping. When's your next discount going to become available? This will be available in Apple Wallet next year as well. We did a fare policy restructure in 2022. It was stunningly easy to implement. Some of my peers in the Clipper region just don't attack their fare payment systems because to open up the proprietary Clipper system is prohibitively expensive for a smaller operator to do so. We had multiple validator vendors operating for a period of time, so it is possible to commoditize your validator rather than being a closed system to only one vendor, Cubic or GFI, that are 90% of the market. You could have multiple validators working in tandem. And we did some experiments where we could provide a discount back to the customer. You tap for the $2 and we'll issue $1 back, or you could actually even issue that $1 back to a charity. We played around with some fun promotional items to just see if these things could happen, and they can. So to date, we've had over 500,000 taps. We have 4,000 unique tap to pay card holders in our county. Now our county is a population of about 400,000. So, that's a good amount for our small county. I like to say we have more heads of lettuce in Monterey County than heads of people. So again, we're a rural, remember we're a rural operator. This isn't the Bay Area. That's a 25% increase over the last year. We've had amazing growth. Almost 40% of our contactless riders reach a fare cap each month, either $2 for 2 hours or $6 pay. So the fare capping is working. In a period of time when our fixed route boardings increased post-COVID by 50%, our contactless ridership increased by 200%. So it is growing quite quickly. Most are using physical cards. But there's also a large number using either mobile phone or using digital wallets as well. So it's a large usage there. I mentioned the validators are going about 175,000 transactions between failures versus the 7,500 between transactions. And then the reason this is important from a cost perspective, I'm the public transit operator. The more money I spend on fare collection and maintaining equipment, that's less money I can put into service on the street. All right, so that's why it's important to us. We want to put as much of our funding into service on the street as possible, not into maintaining our fare payment systems. We have 13% of our transactions are currently contactless. That's not good enough yet. Cash is still predominant with our low-income folks here. To make the cost per transaction comparable to the GFI fare box, we need to up the volume to at least double of where we are today. If we could go to 100% tap to pay, I would be saving up to $600,000 per year, not maintaining the traditional fare boxes. So that's equal to 2 buses a day and the drivers and mechanics to support those 2 buses and all the trips they could make in a day. So that's an important number. Next slide. Oh, I blew through another slide. I'm sorry. I didn't say next slide. I clicked my own and kept going. So here we go. Next slide. Keep going. Next slide. My fault. Next slide. There we are. So a little bit about our discounted system. Currently, only 2% of our contactless transactions are discounted. So we're still really having trouble selling the discounted transactions. You can see the numbers there. Seniors, courtesy cards are those people that we have said are either youth or are disabled. There are Medicare sign-up, 6% through disability and 94% through age, and then we have veterans. It's almost like a one-on-one. We're going out to our transit centers and grabbing people almost one at a time, getting to sign up. So that's not a very efficient way to grow this ridership. We're still struggling to get multiple rides on a single card. We're working with our validator people. So if a family wants to ride together, we're unable to do that. So that's a drawback at this point. We've been using the Visa Cash App while it's available. It's still only 10% of our transactions. We need to find a way to find better options for persons who are unbanked, underbanked. That led to our partnership with the group Center for Financial Empowerment, who you'll hear from after me. The Bank On program promotes those low-cost, no-cost bank accounts. And we're looking for ways to partner with them, offering discounted advertising on our buses to those banks, Bank On providers that want to promote riding transit while using your Bank On card. Next slide. So, where are we? So, next steps for us, we are going to put this contactless payment on our ADA paratransit fleet. We're going to have a transit app integrated payment link where you can plan your trip, and then when you've planned your trip, it'll take you directly to your Google Wallet so that you can just tap to pay. We're looking to have the Apple Wallet starting in March. We're working on a multiple riders on a single card option later in March as well. We're doing a student discount demonstration pilot with a local community college, Hartnell Community College, that will allow you to have student discounts using your college student ID. And this will be something that can be built upon because all community colleges in the state use the same system. So when we build this system, that we're doing it in an open format, API format, so that any transit operator in community college will be able to do the same thing. We're working on the same process with Cal State in Monterey Bay, and Santa Barbara is also working on a process with UC. So you're going to see some movement here with these tap-to-pay solutions for college students. We're going to be working with using these tap-to-pay options for our local TNC and taxi special mobility programs. We're going to need to hire a professional marketing consultant because my staff of one marketing person for my small operation just isn't enough to move the needle on getting awareness. So we hope to, by 2027, stop collecting cash completely on board our buses and have contactless transactions only. This is going to require us to have a closed loop, transit only, reloadable contactless bank card demonstration completed. And we're working with Sacramento RT, Capital Corridor, Santa Cruz Metro, MST, San Luis Obispo County, Santa Barbara Transit, and MetroLink possibly. These are all folks who are outside of the TAP system in LA and the Clipper system in the Bay Area. And we look to have a closed loop card that would be reloadable, so someone doesn't have to have a bank account. They can buy a card and have $10 or $20 or whatever and then go to a retail location, a 7-Eleven, a Walgreens, a retail network to reload their system, or have their social services provider reload. So that is where we're at as far as next steps, and we hope to have that ready to go by September of 2026 in advance of a 2027 contactless only rollout. And that takes me to the end of my presentation. Be happy to answer any questions.
Amazing. So as you can see, it's not impossible. It's possible. And they're a great
the
example.
Technology is easy. It's changing habits is hard. So that's what we found out.
Perfectly stated. For time, I'm going to ask people to put their questions in the chat or in the Q&A. And next, I'm going to go to Aaron from the Cities for Financial Empowerment Fund, who's going to talk about the Bank On initiative and banking in general when it comes to transit.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Carl, and thanks Abby and the rest of the Transform CA team for having me on. It's really good to be here. So yeah, again, I'm Aaron Hirsh with the Cities for Financial Empowerment Fund. We are a national nonprofit and funder, and we help to build financial empowerment strategies into various government systems. And like you heard Carl talk about a little bit, the program I work on, Bank On, is all about connecting people to safe, affordable banking accounts. And I won't go into too much detail because I think folks know, but as I'm sure y'all are well aware, like being unbanked can have a huge negative impact on a person's overall financial well-being. If you're unbanked, you don't have a safe place to keep your money. You got to rely on costly alternative financial services like check cashers. And of course, and we'll get into this in a moment, you might have a harder time accessing all kinds of services, one of which is public transit. So we want to improve people's financial well-being by helping them to get banked. But if we're going to help people get banked, we want to make sure that people are getting into accounts that are going to work for them, that are going to be in their financial best interest. And for that reason, we have the Bank On National Account Standards. And the Bank On National Account Standards are a set of features, things like having no overdraft fees, things like having low or no opening deposit fee, low or no monthly maintenance fee, features that make an account safe, secure, and affordable. And when accounts offered by a financial institution meet that standard, they get the Bank On seal, the Bank On certification. And so consumers then know when they see this account is Bank On certified that it meets a national standard for safety, security, and affordability. At this point, there are 500 Bank On certified accounts available around the country. They are available at all the big national banks that you've heard of, and also lots and lots of regional and local banks and credit unions. So there are tons of options out there for folks. Many of those options can be opened totally online. Many offer different language options. Many offer acceptance of alternative forms of identification. So it's great that those accounts are out there for folks, and we want to encourage as many people as possible to get banked. But sort of the way that our organization sort of cross paths with the transit world is recognizing that just because these accounts exist out there in the world doesn't mean that people are going to wake up in the morning and say, today is my day to go get a bank account, right? Like people are busy, they have lives, they may have mistrust of financial institutions. And so one of the things that we think about a lot at the CFE Fund is how do we meet people where they are and make getting banked a standard part of whatever it is they were already doing. And so this is where we come to transit. And about a year and a half ago, we realized that there was this opportunity to sort of do really three things at once. One, help people access these new open loop tap to pay systems in a way that was going to be cheaper and more convenient for them. Two, bolster people's overall financial well-being by giving them the benefits of banking that don't have anything to do with transit, but are still going to improve their lives. And three, save time and effort for transit systems like Carl was talking about, give MST the opportunity to not have to worry about armored car providers anymore. And so we have been working on supporting transit agencies around the country on helping folks who are riding their buses, riding their trains, get connected to Bank On certified accounts so that their rides can be easier. So with MST, we helped to build a website that highlights for folks the different Bank On options that are available in the area. We've done that with a couple of other transit agencies as well. And we're sort of looking to partner with more agencies. And we're also starting to think about other ways that banking access and opportunities to get into Bank On accounts can be built into the transit riding experience. So, right now we're doing a lot of disseminating information, sharing with people why getting banked is a good idea. But you can imagine a world in which transit agencies were engaging with community-based organizations that are already helping people access transit, and training the staff of those agencies on saying, we're going to help you access this low-income fare program, but we're also going to help you get banked, which is going to make that easier. You could also even imagine a world where financial institutions were saying, hey, if you sign up for a bank on certified account, we might be able to do a rebate where the first $50 or whatever it is you spend on transit goes back into your bank account. So we think there are a lot of ways to continue promoting this idea that by getting banked, you can make your life easier around riding transit, but also improve your overall financial well-being and save money and create efficiencies for transit agencies in the process. So my call to action on this would be specifically for folks on the call who represent transit agencies. If this is interesting to you, if you see opportunities to support your ridership around banking access, really encourage you to reach out. I think that we can share my contact info at the end. Yeah, that is my 2 cents.
Thanks, Aaron. That was great. And now we have our last panelist, Greg, from the California Digital Identity Program, to talk about it from the digital identity lens.
Hi, everyone. My name is Greg Fair. I work for the California Department of Technology, and I lead the state's digital identity program. The program was established with a rather lofty goal. The goal was, and as our mission is aligned to, was to strive to provide every single eligible person with easy and secure and private, privacy-preserving access to any of California's digital services. There are a lot of words in there that we cared about and thought a lot about, and this baseline of security and privacy is kind of core to how we think about a lot of these systems. And very early in my tenure in this role, I was connected to the Cal ITP program and to Monterey-Salinas Transit and the work they were doing. And it was very clear that they were ahead of the curve with any of the other partners that we were considering working with, and also were tackling the kinds of problems that we cared deeply about. In general terms, digital identification and digital verification of identities is really just proving who you are digitally online, right? So that you can ideally get a thing, right? Wherever you might want to do that. So it's really a means to an end. And I think that that's something that we in the California Department of Technology take to heart, that identification is not a thing that people are trying to do, right? They're trying to use it for access to a service. And so what we realized as we were building this out, a few different things. One, we want to provide an identity verification system that makes sense and scales to the state and all the different programs around the state. And that means it's big and complicated, but we also wanted to avoid becoming the star of the show. And I think there are a lot of systems that have been developed over the last number of years that really the identity is the star of the show. And our takeaway was that that's actually, and I think Carl made this point pretty well, not the goal. You're not trying to get in the way, but trying to use the systems that people are already taking advantage of. So creating yet another service and that everybody is required to log into or use was not how we were thinking about service delivery. So that was, I think, one big takeaway we had at the beginning, was really well aligned with what Monterey-Salinas Transit was doing. The other one, and this was something that I don't think we recognized until we had some initial conversations with a number of programs across the state, it turns out identity verification for access to services is typically not enough for most government services, just because you prove who you are, which is, again, the essence of digital identity verification. Doesn't necessarily give you the information you need in order to, for example, access a veterans discount in order to get it 50% off in your transits. So we started looking at this as a two-headed problem. One was the identity verification piece, and the other one was finding the right data sources so that we could do things like prove eligibility based on veteran status, based on disability status, based on income status. Age status for older adults, for example, often does come with identity, but challenges exist there because turns out, if you look across the state, different policies exist for what different agencies might call older adults. So I think we looked at the problem as a technical problem, but we pretty soon realized that there was overall a pretty large policy problem as well. And one thing that I'm really impressed by the work done by the transit agencies is that they started to come together and start to identify some common ages that can be used for older adults, because transit agency to transit agency, there were differences, and that makes it really hard to take advantage of shared systems and shared shared logic. The other thing we wanted to share was the ability to take some of the contracts that we had, which often have large startup costs, annual costs, and things like that, and be able to share those costs across the state. And that's another thing we were able to do, and some partnerships that we had with different identity providers, as well as with different attribute verification providers like the Veterans Administration. We're able to make a lot of progress there to try and scale those costs out to reduce costs overall. So I think that was the main emphasis of what we wanted to do at the state level. So that's kind of the beginning. I wanted to talk about some of the challenges that were not unique to transit, but showed up in transit across the board. And it was a great testing ground for us, and it's an area we continue to pursue. One of them, actually, like I said, related to policies. We worked on some policies. It turns out there are other programs across the state that have interesting policies around accepting signatures. So we need to start working with the different departments on what their policies are for accepting digital signatures. In some cases, we know certain programs require notarized documents to be submitted, and the process of notarization is time-consuming. Often requires in-person visits, and it's costly, right? So we need to work on policy questions to try and make these things more accessible. And then the question of funding came up, because it turns out a lot of the benefit programs that we were working with are funded with an expectation of limited use. And the way that is often calculated, right, it's a straight calculation of, well, we have a certain number of, in this case for transit, it might be riders, right? And you say, well, the fare would have been this, right? But if we're going to give a 50% discount, then that's cost on the system. And I think the thing that we've been working with and we've seen is very true, is that the true cost of these programs and the digitization of these programs is actually offset pretty dramatically by the decrease in the human cost of working on the application processing and things like that. So as we're working towards a much more comprehensive model of what it means to think about costs and benefits, we're seeing a lot of support up and down the state and through different programs for the kinds of work that MST has already done and is really leading the way on. Part of the excellent reporting from Transform around fair fares and access related to some of the different programs that we're seeing across the state that aren't quite there. And I'm happy to report that we're actually working with many of them now to try and move them along. And we're starting to see some of the first rollouts of digital verification that includes discounts for some of these open loop fare systems. So the verification, the digital identity piece, that's kind of where we are and the challenges we've butted up against. I consider it a privilege to have been able to take advantage of some of the payment systems, which is not our area of expertise. It's not what we're building for the state, but knowing that the system that MST put together, for example, allows for folks who don't have digital banking already set up. They have the ability to get something directly through that system and entirely and submit all their information entirely online. And I imagine Carl will answer some questions a little bit later in the Q&A about some of the downstream benefits that we're seeing from those particular actions. The other thing, though, that I wanted to point to for the future is my last primary note here, is that while we try to build a system for everybody, there are still folks who it's hard to reach. Some of the categories of folks that haven't been discussed, shared housing when you have multifamily households. Certainly the unhoused are challenging. So the unbanked and the underbanked and the unhoused, there's a lot of overlap there, but they are different challenges to be solved. And importantly, where Carl's kind of said at the beginning of all this, the goal is to make it as easy as possible to reach people where they are. And changing behavior is difficult, so leveraging existing behaviors is going to be the key to moving all of these kinds of initiatives forward. And that's where I just wanted to point ahead a little bit and acknowledge that what we're seeing now from industry, not only on the banking side and not only within tech and government and different transit agencies and the work happening there, not only with the open loop systems and the move towards more open structures, is that our primary mobile platforms are actually now aggressively moving to make the same kinds of progress that happened with cards and credit cards and debit card payments in wallets into identity verification and being able to use more types of credentials directly on device. And in a world where these things are already baked into the two primary providers, we will see much more of a natural uptick in usage. And so making sure that we all can leverage those technologies as we move forward is going to be one of those critical things that we can do. So in California, at the Department of Technology, the goal has been to build a solution that works with our existing systems, but is future-proofed for the changes in technology that we anticipated and are now coming to reality. And so we're excited as these new technologies come online, the transition, similar to the rate fare changes that Carl was talking about, the transition should be relatively straightforward as we move from one type of identity provider to another, and ones that are more on device, that are cheaper to build, that are cheaper to support, and give users more privacy and more control. And as we look at this at a statewide level, not just in transit, but our goal is to try and let people, once they understand that they have access to certain benefits, we can then pre-qualify them, or at the very least recommend to them other types of benefits that may be outside the transit space that they are already qualified for, because we know about these things and they'll have a token or some sort of verification method with them they can reuse for all different kinds of government services. So that's where we're headed with this, and we're excited to be a partner to both of the folks that I'm sharing this panel with in this next phase. So thank you very much.
Awesome. I think we are towards the end of our time, so we don't have time for too many questions. Thank you so much for answering questions as they happened in the Q&A box. I do see one, maybe you have time to answer just one question quickly. I think Carl, maybe you're the best one to answer this one, but Jeannie asked, I'd love to hear from the panel on how we can push for these services to be interoperable and embraced by all transit agencies statewide. And then maybe if you had time real quick, has MSC seen ridership changes or feedback from riders in response to rolling out these new products? As quick as you can.
Yeah, I answered the second one out there. We are currently in the middle of an passenger intercept survey, where we're out on the street talking to our passengers, and we're asking questions about this, and we'll report more at a later date on that. We've had robust growth in ridership in the city of Salinas, our largest, most densest population of low-income people in disadvantaged communities. We're at 108% of pre-COVID ridership. So we are above and beyond, and that runs contrary to what many Bay Area transit operators have had. With regard to the standard, the RFP that we hope to issue later this month, or before the year end, anyway, not the end of this month. I just gave my CIO who's on the call a heart attack. RFP issued by the year end. We hope to have a standard that can be adopted for a closed loop card that can be read by any open loop reader that is reloadable at a retail network. We hope to have something in place that can be used, as I mentioned, by SAC-RT, possibly Capital Corridor, expressed an interest. Santa Cruz Metro is interested, MST, San Luis Obispo, Santa Barbara, Ventura County, and to the MetroLink. We have all those operators are interested in participating in this closed loop standard that can be read by any open loop validator that's reloadable through a retail network. If we're successful with this, then we will have a standard that anyone should be able to operate that allows people to reload. And then, we have to work out the details on the discount eligibility with that, that process. So that's where we're at.
Okay.
5 new messages.
Awesome. Okay, well, I just wanted to end with a call to action. Thank you for all of my amazing panelists. I don't know, I think we had some of the best panelists on this subject, like practicing it in practice, amazing subject matter experts. So thank you everyone for making the time. We will send a follow-up email with the report so that you can read it if you haven't read it already. We also are recording this, so you'll have the recording. It'll also have my email, so if you have any questions, you can email me more in depth if you're like reading and you don't really understand something, or you wanted to follow up on something that was said. I know there are some transit agency people on this call, so we'll make sure we'll get Aaron's contact information and a PDF that he gave me so that if you're interested in chatting with him, which I hope you are after hearing this amazing presentation, you can contact him directly. And yeah, please read the report, get signed up on our newsletter, and I will put our website so that you can get signed up on our website to hear more from us. But other than that, thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you, Abby and Transform, for putting this together. We had a nice turnout. Congratulations.
Thank you so much. Thank you. I appreciate it.
everyone.
Awesome. All right. We can go ahead and I think end it for everyone. Thank you, everyone.